Hi, I'm Jack Dennis. As you can see, I'm on a beautiful trout stream in the desert country of Oregon. The folks at Cabelas have asked me to bring to you a video on how to improve your fly casting. Now you might say, well man, teach us right here. You're on one of the best streams in the world. But it doesn't start on this stream. It really ends on this stream. We're going to start at the basics. The folks at Cabelas wanted me to take you from the start to the finish and give you some ideas on how to improve your fly casting. Some of it's going to be about your equipment and your lines, but it's really going to be about techniques, casting techniques. To learn how to master fly casting, I like to think of this one statement. I want to give it to you, and I want you to remember it, because if you're having a little bit of trouble, stop and think this over. A fly rod is no more than an extension of your arm. Your energy starts in your body, it flows through your arm, into the rod, into the line, and eventually to your fly. And along the way, problems can occur. But if you remember, this rod is a part of your arm. It's going to help you. Now, we're going to start with the basics, and that's how you start mastering it. Now, a lot of you say, I already know how to cast. Well, let's go back to school. In fact, we're going to go to Idaho Falls, Idaho, to a park there, and meet the boys from the Jack Dennis Fly Fishing School. And we're going to talk over the basics once again. The place to practice is not on the stream. While you'll always be thinking about your casting, and you can certainly work on things while you're fishing, the best place to hone your casting skills is on a lawn, on a pond near your home, but wherever's convenient. Especially coming home from work, take 15 minutes or so and practice. Work on one segment at a time, not try to learn everything all at once. Now, while I'm going to teach you a lot in the next few minutes, remember, concentrate on some of the areas you need to work on. Once you master them, then work on to the others. But let's get started. First of all, not being rude, I'm going to put on sunglasses. Now, if it's a dark day, just any kind of glass. Even though I don't have a fly on here, I have a piece of yarn, and that'll act like a fly. Give me a little weight, let the leader turn over. Don't ever practice with just a fly line. You need to have a leader because you're going to be using that when you're fishing. So wear your glasses, especially anytime you have a fly going in the air. Okay, now we're going to get started. I always tell everybody I want to make friends with the fly rod. That it shouldn't be an enemy, although some people want to throw them in the water because they had so much trouble. Getting back to what we said before, it's an extension of your arm, and we're about to work on that aspect. First of all, when we start out, we have to get the line moving. How do we do that? Well, we bring our arm back up. Well, I watch a lot of people bring it back up, kind of look like a lame duck flying out there. I mean, they get real ginger about that. Now, I see this a lot on beginners, and they get it up like this, and they go like that, and you hear that snap. They really got that forward cast. But what we're going to do is what we call a back cast. We all know that. We've all had the basic lessons, back cast. But I prefer to call it acceleration. We want to get it moving. Some of you need to get the line moving. You got to get it accelerated. And some of the keys to a good forward cast start with a good back cast. A good back cast, good acceleration. Get it moving, get some authority. Don't be afraid of that rod. A nice grip on the rod, a good acceleration. I sometimes wonder if is there a point where you have too much acceleration? Don't often see that. Okay, now we start to accelerate, we have another problem. I see this from a lot of people. Boy, they really want to, they're just making the rod go back and forth. And you know these graphite rods are so good. They make so much line speed that if you get the line waving up and down, eventually you'll get it out. The problem with that is we have a fly on the end with the hook. And eventually it never catches up to the line and snap, it either comes off, either catches your friend behind you, your own ear, or you lose it. What do we got to do to stop that? We got to develop a stroke. Hey, yes. You heard it was a cast? No, it's a casting stroke. Yeah. Think of it that way. Stroke, like a tennis stroke, golf stroke. You know, there's a lot of this casting's like golf. And if you've played golf before, some of the same teaching techniques we're going to use here. Okay, so let's start off. Let's start off right now with a short stroke. A short stroke. Why? We want to make a short cast. Right now I have enough line out to probably catch most of the fish that you'll encounter. 25 foot of line. Okay, so what we want to do is bring this stroke up. Okay, now the stroke, if we were in a clock, and we hear a lot about that, and I know you had your basic lesson, you heard the 10 to 2, river runs through it, the guy said it's a 4-beat count and all that. But let's really get reality here. What we want this rod to do is flex. Oh yeah, you remember the action? It's got to flex. Yeah, it's got to flex. We got to hold on to the reel seat here. And you can see what the rod does. You can feel the energy go up your arm into it. Feel that energy in that rod. Feel it. Visualize it. The Zen of life casting is coming on here.
Well, now into our exercise. I call it casting exercise. And something that I've worked out over the years of teaching casting for a long time. Would you believe 50 years of
I do believe
casting?
it.
Not teaching it, but 45 years of teaching it, 50 plus years of casting. I think that things like sports need to be taught in sections. And so the first section that you worked on was the casting stroke. You know, getting a good casting stroke so you don't have, you know, you did such a great job of teaching it. Now we're going to hammer that into the people by practice, 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 which Andy said.
Exactly.
So here we go. What we're going to do is tuck this arm, tighten it up, and do what we call a short, accurate cast. But what we're going to do is start feeling the rod tip. As we pull down on it, we feel the rod tip unfold. And we practice not going back as far, doing everything that you showed us in that first stroke. And we do it over and over again, but we don't do it too long. I think you mentioned, what, 15 minutes is all you want to really practice?
That's a good amount of time if you can set aside that per day to really hone your skills.
Yeah, I think if you get too much, you can also put in bad habits too.
Absolutely.
But so what we're going to do is work on this, going up and down and practicing. And what you're developing is something you said earlier, rhythm, right? The rhythm of a cast. And it comes into play when we talk about that false cast, developing a rhythm. And you do this. Now, if you were in San Francisco and you ran out to the Golden Gate Casting Club, you'd see 50 guys out there before they go into casting competition for 20 minutes doing this, going up and down, following that rod right on it. You know what they're going to do, Micah?
What's that?
They're going to put a target out there.
Let me run this out there for you.
Thank you, sir. That'll give you a good target. Now, notice I'm just going back and forth, shortening that stroke, using the thumb, there we go, I'll do that until I can hit it like in 10 casts. Boom. You want to try that?
Sure, you bet.
Because I've watched you do this before. Boo. Look at that. Now look what happens if you break your wrist. I want you to break your wrist. Whoa. What? The loop's gone. The line's heading. Now, I want you to tighten that up, do that stroke just right. Now, what you want to do is not get to the habit, folks out there, of going like that and trying to force that down to come here. What you want to do is lock that wrist and accurate. Look at that. Look at the difference. He's hitting it every time. So what do you think of this? You can just pay me some money now or later for this nice, great tip.
I'll get you later, Jack.
Oh, okay. You know, the next exercise we're going to do is feeling the cast. You know, you're from Asia, right? You were born in Asia?
Yep, I was born in Vietnam, Jack.
But you learned to fly fish here.
I sure did.
Where you live. But you heard of Zen over there, didn't you?
It's about mastery.
It's about mastery. But this is about feeling your way rather than visual. The samurai swordsmen did it closing their eyes. They could do everything automatic. So what we're going to do is learn to feel the cast. We're going to learn to hold the rod up, feel the strokes, feel the line go and the energy. Now, grab this rod. I'm going to show you how you do this.
Okay.
Now, right here, this energy is going to go through this rod, and you're going to feel this energy all the way to the tip. And you know, you had a great tip about, you know, keeping your rod in. This is a great place to bring out the bandana. But we're going to show you another way to feel it, because you need to feel that butt move. And that's a hard thing for people to understand, is this butt has to flex. And the only way this butt flexes So the energy goes as if you come to a stop. So you put your 2 fingers right there. Now we're going to bring that up and come to a stop. Okay, with authority, just like you're making a cast.
Okay.
Now the first thing is you're going to close your eyes because you're going to concentrate and have that Zen work for you. We're going to concentrate on feeling the energy flow up to the tip of the rod. Very good. Feel it again. Come to a stop. Now, you know when you feel that energy go into the tip, what do you want to do?
You want to change direction.
That's right. So let's go ahead and do that. So when you feel that energy hit the tip, your line is going to be parallel to the ground. It's teaching you rhythm, it's teaching you timing. Again, stop. Come up to and come and stop. Now, I don't want you to stop. I want you just to wave the rod.
Okay.
Just like a lot of your students do when they first start. What do you feel?
Not much.
Do you feel any energy going anywhere?
You really don't.
So this is a way to feel your back cast. What you need is to be out there, close your eyes, come to a stop. Just till you feel that stop and that flex of the rod. What that flex is going to do is throw that line behind us. And then as you come forward, this can play into effect because you can try different places. If you put the energy in too quick, you're going to feel the energy go up the rod and stop. Try that. See, look at it. Just feel how it just stopped right in the middle of the rod.
Sure did.
Now let's make a full cast where you're adding more power. What you're trying to do is get that wump that we were talking about, adding more energy towards lowering the cast.
You got it.
Whoa, look at that. I mean, for people who have never made a really good forward cast, this will let them know how it feels. Let's try it again. Add more power lower in the cast. Look how that shoots out. Now add it and take a stop. You just try this, folks. Do different casts, and you'll feel where the energy is, and you'll really feel your way through. You don't even have to go to San Francisco or to Asia. You'll be able to get the zen of fly fishing right here, the zen of the cast. And this is the way that I teach it to feel. And it's a great exercise, actually 2-part exercise, back cast and the forward cast that you beautifully showed us at the start. One of the other things too is you're breaking your wrist. You really feel that if you take that away now, close your eyes and feel what happens when you break your wrist. You feel really nothing going through the rod. You're just using leverage. And you know this rod, if you move it up and down like that, it'll still get line out.
Exactly.
But it won't get line out accurately or against any kind of breeze.
It's really tough to feel.
Tough to feel. So the feeling is what this is all about, this exercise. You know, with this accuracy cast, the other way is to get a little bit more distance and add one false cast in. And what I do is I just take a few more steps back, keep the same amount of line out, and then take a few steps back here. And then what we're going to do is we got this line out here. We're going to do a couple false casts and then try to hit the line with a little bit longer cast. Now, you know, we're trying to actually combine it with the false cast. Now, and make a longer cast. And then you're still pulling down on that rod and doing the accuracy, but instead you're adding one false cast and doing the same thing, which leads you to shooting line. And that was Andy's deal. And I'm going to bring Andy in right now, and we're going to work on shooting line exercises. Well, Andy, it's your turn now to teach us more of the basics of fly casting. And one of the basics, of course, is the false cast. And why do we need the false cast?
The false cast is important because it sets you up to present the fly to the fish.
And it's a cast, too, that can be abused a lot, can it?
It sure is.
If your casting stroke goes bad, it's going to happen in the false cast, isn't it?
Absolutely right.
And one thing that we should also know that in the old days, that false cast was our way of getting a lot of line out. And what Andy said, it was a way of presenting the fly. So we're going to talk about 2 aspects of this cast. So first of all, why don't you show us the false cast?
Well, the first thing you want to do is grab your rod. Grab it, put your thumb on top, grip it fairly firm, but don't squeeze the heck out of it. Grab the rod with your right hand in a fairly firm manner. And your line hand, whichever hand is not on the rod, will be your line hand. So hold that line. Now we're going to do our back cast. We're going to accelerate to that stopping position and come forward. Keeping that plane parallel to the ground or the water. Back and forth, same tempo, two separate motions that are exactly the same. So I accelerate to the stop in the back, accelerate to the stop in the front. Where people get in trouble is they work too hard at it and they get loose. You want a nice transfer of power, so firm that up and transfer that power into the rod. Let the rod do the work. It's a really easy thing to do. You just have to let the rod do the work. Trust that rod will get it out there.
It's really a tip cast. You're using the tip of the rod.
Exactly right.
Now, if you let that handle rotate too much in your hand like that, your tip, if you can look right now and you can see your tip is clear way back. Your tip needs to be up here. And boy, you can really get your casting problems accentuated. You'll catch things behind you and by not having a good false cast.
Exactly right. And it'll change that plane. You want that plane of the loop, the line that I flick forward. When you watch when my rod tip comes forward, I flick that loop off the tip of my rod. The tighter that loop is, the less wind it's going to hang up on and the flatter your cast is going to lay out there. So,
now you're going to present the line. Now what do you do there?
nothing changes. It's just the same as a false cast stroke, but right when you get your line out there and your loop unfolds, you're just going to give up on your cast and follow the line down with the rod tip. So you get your line out there and then drop it.
There's a dark side of this false cast, and it can go really wild. People can get totally out of control. And it usually happens when either the stroke is too wide or they start breaking their wrist. Show us that dark side and what you can do to correct it.
Okay.
Well, there it is, real nice and wide. That's a very common to a lot of people out there. Now, what do we do to?
Well, we're just slowly going to clean this up. I'm going to slowly get that loop, whip that loop into shape.
Well, you're doing it by tightening your wrist and shortening your stroke.
Exactly. I'm making it easier.
Yes, you are. So as that rod goes back, if you just tighten that up, just watch what here. Okay, look at that. Just how much tight. Look, miraculously, the line is back up on the plane. One of the things, too, is to realize that line's got to straighten out, isn't it?
Yes.
And so you've got to momentarily pause. And I tell people when I'm teaching the casting, you've got to still come to that absolute stop.
It is two separate motions. It's a back stop, wait for your line, forward stop, wait for your line. And as your line gets longer, you're making your cast longer, that pause is longer. It takes longer for that line to travel to the opposite ends of your cast.
And you actually have to open your stroke up. That's where that longer stroke comes in.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've got to start to teach people how to shoot a line. And we've talked about shooting it on a false cast. Rather than lengthening the false cast, you can do it literally with these graphite rods by just developing a high line speed and letting it go at the right time.
Exactly. If you watch when I come forward, just drop the line. Nothing happens. But if I put a little bit more speed and power into that front stroke, watch what happens. You shoot the line.
If you let it go too soon, it's got to go straight up the rod, doesn't it?
Exactly.
And here it's more pointed to where you want it to go, and it's just a matter of physics. It's going to pull out.
Right.
Let's see that again.
Okay. One false cast and bang.
And right there, you did the equivalent of 2 or 3 false casts adding line.
Exactly.
So that's probably something they're going to have to practice. Now, Andy, what about presentation? Obviously, you shot a line. The line kind of crashed right into the water.
Right.
What is the next step?
The next step is to just fine-tune that. Just feel it a little bit more with the tip of your rod and set that down a little bit softer.
We call that backing off the power.
Backing off the power.
Now, notice right there, really important, how he brought his arm back here. It's a natural movement. He made the cast and he brought the arm back. Let's do it again.
Okay.
Oh, very nice. And you do that after you make the cast. You make the cast, and the rod is pointed to where you want it to go, and you gently bring it back, and that lowers the cast. Okay, now one of the things that can happen is if you don't back off the power and you stop, and a lot of beginning fly fishermen realize if they stop at the front part of that cast real quickly, the line will settle down. But it creates some problems, doesn't it?
Creates a lot of problems. You're going to lose a lot of flies You could potentially break your rod by throwing that fly into your rod too. So let me just show you what happens.
Well, look at that present. That's pretty terrible.
That's pretty poor. My fish was out there 10 feet further.
Yeah. So what you're doing is you're stopping too soon and not following through. Sort
Exactly.
of like in any kind of sport, whether it's a golf swing, you got to follow through.
Right.
Let's take a look at the right way you should do it. Very nicely. Okay, now let's say how you shouldn't do it. Again, look at the difference in the presentation. And when he's talking about that, if you stop too quickly about losing flies, here, let me just show, boom, how many of you had that happen? If you stop too quickly, that fly will catch, and it's kind of an unusual thing. What it does, it catches on your line with the hook when you stop too abruptly, and then it follows it down and makes the most beautiful overhand knot, boom, like that. And we call that a wind knot, which there is no wind here, and I can pull this leader up right now and feel the knots on it. And it's really a bad cast knot. We're really polite in fly fishing. So when you stop real quickly, that fly is going to travel down and just do a nice little overhead knot. Now you may not know it until the fish hits, and when you set the hook, boom.
Lost the fish.
You lost the fish. So again, the presentation with the rod, but you know, there's something you were doing. I want you to do another one of those nice presentation casts for me. Now, you did this by holding the line on your right hand. Isn't it really important to know what to do with your hands?
Oh, for sure. If you watch bugs out there on the water, as soon as those flies hit the water, they get eaten. And it's the same when you have a fly on the end of your line. So as soon as you make your cast, there's a good chance a fish is going to eat it right away. And if you're not ready, you're not going to catch the fish.
So what should they do? Let's watch the hands now. Hands are really important here. Now, when he lets go of that line, look where his hands go. Right over to be underneath the finger. Now, if a fish takes it, you're just going to do like another cast, just like that. And he's already got the fish on that way. Now, one of the important parts of managing our line is also fishing, which is setting the hook. And I know there's two ways you can do that, one wrong and one right, right?
Right.
So, okay, so we got the line underneath the trigger finger. Now what do we do from there?
We pinch the line against the cork grip of the rod and pick up with the same power that you would make your back cast.
And there you got the fish on.
There's the fish.
Now then you can use your right hand to strip in.
Exactly.
And you don't have to. Now what happens if you don't have the finger underneath it?
If I don't have the finger underneath it,
first you got to reach down.
You got to reach down.
The fish could be taking your fly.
Right. And now we're going to pull.
You pulled it right out of their mouth.
Right out of their mouth.
And you had too much energy going to the fly, and then you had to, if you did get lucky and you had him on, you have your hand over here.
Yeah, what do you do now?
Well, you try to get it over, you bite the line, right?
All right, yeah, yeah.
Get Giardia from the water. Let's just show you what can happen. Cast the line to him. And okay, so you get lucky with that, with reusing your right hand. Hold on. Now, right there, you broke the line off because it was too much pressure. But we'll say you did it even luckier. Then that comes and you hook the fish with that. Okay, you go up, set it right. Now you still got a problem. How are you going to get your line in? Like that? Okay. So I want to see how you do that. Come on. Let's see. This is the comical part of fly fishing. You can have a lot of fun watching people try to do that. But it's not a good thing to do.
And that's what I ended up doing, is putting it right underneath my trigger finger.
So why not have it there from the start?
Exactly.
All right, folks. Now, what we're going to do, we're going to take you through some exercises, through all the basics, so you can work on the lawn, at home, practicing these, and then we're going to get you ready to go out on the stream. We're going to join Pete Erickson from Team USA. Now, our next, I brought in Andy because he taught you about shooting the line and, of course, the false cast. And you know, when we first talked about that false cast, Andy, we were talking about adding more line, and that used to be the way that we did it. And of course, you got so tired having all this line out. Now I watch people, they just start going crazy trying to get line out. And of course, we taught them the shooting of the line, where they can shoot a line, the same amount of line, which I just did right here with one cast. But there's an exercise to teach you about shooting the line. And at first, it's just going back to that first short stroke cast. You just do the same thing. What you do is going to have your thumb, but you use your thumb and finger. And you bring it up, and then you start letting it go. Now, do you see how that front loop just kind of collapsed there? A lot of that is I let it go too soon, and I didn't put any power. And you were talking about how you had to add a little more power, didn't you?
Right.
So to go out on your lawn, what you want to do is you can actually teach yourself that, I call it the sweet spot, by learning to where to let it go. As you come forward, just let go with the fingers. And you can see how it should, that was okay. But once you start feeling it, now if I let it go too soon, look at that. It had to go all the way up here. So what we got to do is to practice this, letting it go at the right time. And then eventually, if you do about 30 of these, you're going to start feeling if you let it go there, it's going to go a little bit farther and you get the sweet spot. I'm sure you go through this with your lessons.
I do.
And so what we want to do then is learn to increase the power at that sweet spot. So as you're practicing, what you don't want to do, folks, is have a whole bunch of line out. I've got probably more than what you need out to start. I would only put out about 3 rod lengths, and that would just bring it up and then let it go. And then you'll start knowing when to add more power. Boom, more power, look at that. But still, it kind of died a little. I still need to work on it. Again, using this pinch method. What do you think?
You
like this?
I do.
You want to try it?
Sure.
This is, I call the shooting line exercise. Yeah, see now that time the line hit a little bit soft, a little bit in the belly, so you're going to increase the power on your next cast where you let it go. Yeah, look at that. Boy, that was beautiful.
Yeah.
And this exercise will work adding Andy's instruction when you go back on the tape on the false cast. So what we're going to do, Andy, no, you're going to do it.
Okay.
Do 1 false cast and then shoot the line.
Okay.
And practice that. Do 1, 2, shoot. Okay. Now, then, of course, you want to practice, too, getting that line over there immediately, right? You taught us how to do that. Okay. So you can maybe then do 2 false casts. 1, 2. Again, watch right here. He's letting the line go. And you will find that the more you let it go up here, the bigger the loops are, the more problems you have, the more down in here, and the more time you add power in the lower stroke. It's a great exercise, isn't it, Andy?
It is. It really is. You can really dial in that sweet spot.
Dial in the sweet spot.
Well, you've had a chance to see the basic cast and tune up your casting, but fly casting is about fishing. And we're going fishing now, and I've been joined here by a friend of mine, Pete Erickson, a fishing guide from Wyoming, Idaho, Alaska, and all points in between, but also a member of Team USA, America's team in the World Fly Fishing Championships. In the competition in Slovakia, you had our best finish of any of our team members. First of all, I want to talk about what it's like being a guide, and what are the common casting mistakes you see?
Probably the #1 casting flaw that I see is too much wrist. It causes a lot of other problems. You can use wrist certainly in different casting styles, but too much wrist is not good for any casting style.
Another one is just, I'm noticing right now, the breeze is starting to come up, and the breezes can become wind. And that's another problem, isn't it?
Yeah, casting into the wind, a lot of people just go home. They just give up and go home, and you miss out on a lot of great fishing.
What about casting indicators, big heavy flies?
Or big giant heavy flies like streamers and stuff, and indicators. Yeah, that's extremely tough for people. They tend to false cast too much. They also have too tight a loop sometimes when they're casting those types of flies. So loop control is a big thing with those.
Pete, I'd like you to take us out on the stream here. We're here in Boise, Idaho on the Boise River. And this is where you teach school.
Yeah.
And when you're not guiding or on Team USA, you're a school teacher in junior high.
Yep. Ninth grade English.
So I mean, all of you are going to get a chance to go back to school here and see what it's like to go fishing. And it's not an object right now is to learn how to handle the stream conditions. And I guess the key is practice, practice, practice.
but you want to be thinking more of your fishing and not your casting when you go fishing.
Right. It's nice to have it down so you're not breaking it down in your head the whole time. So it's a natural thing for you to just go out and start fishing.
Well, I'm going to get my vest.
All right, me too.
And we gather up some rods, different types of rods and lines for the people to see, and
yeah,
we'll start talking about these casts on the stream. So come on with us. Let's go out and give it a try.
Let's go get some fish.
Yeah.
Yeah, looks good.
Nice little backwater. Oh man, look at
the way that camera going.
Well, right now we have to present this fly in a natural way to imitate the insect, or in the case of a streamer, the bait fish. So I thought we'd take our friends out there through some of the cast and talk them through. Now obviously we've come up on a riffle here, and this has got everything. I mean, when you first learn, you're told to cast upstream, have the dry fly. Now we're going to start with the dry fly,
right,
come back down. And the upstream cast, there's a lot to an upstream cast, isn't there?
Yeah.
Let's take the stream in quadrants, which I try to tell people.
Good
You got
idea.
an upper quadrant, you got a middle quadrant, and you got a downstream quadrant. And in dry fly fishing, even in fishing with a nymph and an indicator, it's still, you can fish all those quadrants.
Absolutely. You can take the same method and work each quadrant the same way.
And without even moving from one spot.
Mm-hmm. That's the beauty of it.
But let's kind of take what we've learned so far in our presentation and take it out and show the folks actual stream fishing and stream cast.
Yeah.
What I want to do right now, Pete, before we get started, is take the folks away to show them some preparation tips.
Okay.
One of the things is, clean your line, prepare that way, have a good leader butt on there, and I'd like to take them right now and show them that.
Okay, before we go fishing, there's a lot of things that we can do. One of them is to make sure that your line is nice and clean.
You know, I've got some line cleaner here and show all the folks out there. This is really a nice setup because it's got a way to apply it on. You can use a handkerchief or something. There's lots of line cleaners out there, and you can get them from.
That is a nice system.
Cabelas has tons of different ones. This one here, this is a Loon product.
Yeah, I'm familiar with that one. That's one of the ones I use.
Made right here in Boise, right?
Boise, Idaho,
yeah. Okay, what we can do is strip some of that out.
Okay.
Now, if you haven't been fishing for a while, it's going to come off kind of coiled.
Mm-hmm.
Did you notice that?
Yeah, it has a little memory in it.
And a lot of people will start grabbing on to taking lines, grab a hold of that.
Okay.
And they'll start pulling like this.
Right.
And they'll get, out about 20, 30 feet and start pulling. It puts all the pressure right on one point. Let me just show you a little trick.
Okay.
You hold on to it.
All right.
I lean in, hold on to it tight.
Okay.
I lean into it with my body. That gives an even pull on it.
Oh,
and you take it in small sections rather than big, long sections.
Oh, okay. So stretch it in small sections.
In small sections throughout and then you'll get a much better without pulling apart. Okay, and then of course you're gonna, what I can do is hold this.
Okay.
And I can do this and you can start reeling back in. You can strip it all out like this.
I can pack it on there nice and
so you're going on the back and forth and go right on through and we've got it done. Pete, there's another thing you can do too, and you know this from just being a guide. Nothing worse than a linty leader, right? Mm-hmm. And out here in the West, when you go into a fly shop, you're going to get a big chunk of leader butt put on. But usually they're made of the same material, which is, limp, if you're especially a dry fly leader, it's just thicker limp leader. Mm-hmm. So what we do is we end up in putting on a leader butt section, which is a lot heavier.
Right.
And this is it's been used up a little bit. It's probably about 30-pound test on this 5-weight line, anywhere from 25 to 35-pound test. And this is going to help roll the leader over. So that's an important thing to get set before you go out there.
Make sure your butt section is good.
And you want to have it anywhere from 2 feet to 1.5 feet is the ideal section.
Right.
Finished cleaning the line. We got the leaders ready to go. Look at all that dirt that was on there.
Yeah, it's amazing how much dirt gets on these lines.
Also, another little tip, keep the sunscreen, right?
Yeah.
Sunscreen off your hands. It'll make your line get nice and soft, and that's not a good thing. You want it stiff, and this will, of course, help take that off.
I'm ready.
We've seen what you do on the stream before you go out fishing. You do the same thing what we just saw. Prepare your line, make sure good leader butts on there.
Yep.
How would you prepare the first cast if you were going to go fish for a fish that be up in here? Can you just walk us through it?
I would. Actually, I would start by thinking about it as we approach from back here. And I might actually lower my body down a little and watch the river for just a little bit. I love to do that. As we were setting up in here, we saw a fish rise. And we kind of walked through it, and it's like, oh, hey. And it was in a little bit closer than we thought. So I would watch the river just a little bit. And I enjoy that personally. And then I would slowly approach the river and definitely fish the inside seams. I can't tell you how many people I see walk right over that water.
Right.
It's amazing. And I've done it too. I've walked out there and all of a sudden stood there and looked back and said, oh no, what am I doing? I'm standing right on the first part I was going to fish. So that's the first part. Walk up to that, and then you can get ready. You can start kind of looking around and see how you're going to approach it by breaking it up into sections.
Okay, we're going to start here. Let's just say we have a fish rising just about 10 o'clock in front of us.
Yeah,
right
that's
here.
a good example. Let's say that we did see that guy
Right.
rise. I like to be at this classic angle that you hear people talking about because of the way the fish can see, you know, their field of vision. So you're down behind them a little bit. It also helps your presentation as far as how you let the fly come down over the top of them. I always when I'm getting my line out, I always take the line off first. You know, hold the fly in hand. I'll show you. Just what I would
let's
do.
just show us. The people out here want to see it.
Let's pretend that that fish is not too far away. I'm going to get on your other side.
Sure.
So I'm a lefty. I always like to cast off to the side. I've spooked too many fish by trying to time it, and I always like to go short too. If I land short, no big deal. I don't usually spook the fish. That's another common mistake that you see people do. They cast over the top of it and say, oh, I need to make an adjustment. So I take off a little line. Let's just say, for example, that fish right there, and there was a fish right there, is about 15 feet away. Check my back cast, make sure I'm okay.
Yep. More back casts eat flies than anything else.
And it's always the first one. So you know, I'm a good tree catcher too. So what I would do is time my cast over here without too many false casts, because the fish have a tendency to see it. That looks about right.
Yep.
So and I like to
You've measured it. What you've done, you've measured your cast.
Exactly, and it's no harm over here because it's not really going to affect the fish. You don't necessarily, depending on the river that you're on, you don't necessarily have to crouch down. I mean, it could be some serious backaches. I just have a habit of doing that, just crouching down, and I think it helps with your approach getting low. Then I don't like to cast over the top of the fish a lot with false casts.
Nope.
I just like to eliminate all the steps of casting and start fishing. So what I would do is bring it out here like this, get it to where I want it, and lay it right over the fish.
One cast, that's it.
Yep.
Now, okay, right here, immediately, you can see that. That's a belly. That's causing the fly. Now, you did a little mend there. That's so important. I like the way you mended that. Show us how you did that.
With a little flip, let's do the cast again and watch how the belly develops, because we have a current here that's going through the middle that's creating a tongue. Little Belgian cast right there, which is the swirl around cast that you've seen before. And see the belly developing?
Yep, the belly's developing right there.
Exactly. And that can't happen because what it's going to do is
it's dragging the fly.
It's drag the fly under.
But if you tried to set the hook right now, you wouldn't hook any fish.
No, because you're too far away from it. Not to mention the presentation's terrible. So what I like to do is lay it down and flip the belly in the other way.
Rather than pick it up and roll it and cause a ripple on the water.
Which is called a mend. There's a couple different ways you can get rid of that problem right there of the belly developing. You can aerialize the mend, which is throw the belly in the air.
Right.
Or you can do what most people do, which is lay it down and kind of decide where it's going to happen and come up with the rod and a nice gentle flip.
Right.
I do two of them because there's another current right here.
That's true.
And then bring in that extra line, and you see we have just enough slack right there. So, and you know, almost anywhere that you fish, you're going to see that develop. It may only take you one cast.
You know, Pete, one of the things that's really going to happen for the beginning anglers out there, if you have a problem in your cast where you're using too much wrist, you're really going to find out, because first of all, you're going to catch trees behind you, but you're not going to have a straight presentation.
Right.
And I'd like to just show what the difference between the presentation in locking that wrist and doing that short stroke cast compared to a wide open cast.
Okay.
Would you like to give us a wide open cast?
Yeah, I'll give you a wide open cast. First thing I'm going to have to do is, I know that I'm going to have trouble with
We're going to step out a little bit.
Already.
That's good. That's good.
So, and another thing too is there's just so many variables with a really floppy wrist.
Right.
I mean, we got all sorts of casting styles and they're all legitimate, but you don't see a lot of really, really floppy wrists. It's a controlled wrist, if anything.
Now let's take a look. I want
So you
people
wanna
to see
start
the.
that one
I want to
first?
see the dark side.
Okay, go over.
And so watch what happens when he tightens the wrist up, and you're going to see a much nicer, more accurate cast. It's going to be less of a belly when you have a much better cast. Look how much tighter it goes out, how the line lands more evenly on the water. Very nicely there.
Just eliminating that. I like to think of it as like throwing darts.
Now, one of the things immediately, as we've talked about and throughout this presentation, is the minute he makes that cast, that finger goes, the line goes right to the finger. You don't see Pete fishing it like this because you got to be able to set the hook.
Line management is huge. That's what I tell all the people that I fish with, all the anglers that I'm helping to catch fish. You got to do your line management. Once you get your cast down and you're there for the presentation, it's all for naught if you lay a perfect presentation in there and you're not ready to go. Because this is what you get right here, which is, it's kind of comical. You can hear the insert circus music here at that point. When they set the hook, they got the fish on and they're here all of a sudden.
Yep.
So what's the next thing? It's in the mouth. Right here.
But the fish is gone by then because your rod tips down, you had too much slack.
Exactly. So and then, you know, you remind them, you say, well, this works really well too. Just handing it to the finger so you got some line management.
Right.
Rather than the whole game up here where you're reaching.
We've been fishing upstream, which is one of the classic ways of fishing. But right now we've got fish rising right in front of us, and we're going to make a cast right in front of us. And that requires a little bit different cast too.
Absolutely.
Because you're going to immediately get dragged the minute it hits, aren't you?
Oh yeah. Anywhere below you or across from you or below you, you've got drag issues.
Okay, we'll come out here a little bit and show them how you're going to handle that.
Okay.
Also, you got a little bit of a problem too. And one of the things, while we're here, let me just mention, it's important to change the way you cast when you have trees behind you. What I can do is bring this rod up, I can make the cast, bring it back towards me and still get a presentation without hooking the trees behind it. And that is something you want to practice, different ways of changing your stroke to get an effect on your cast.
Yeah, a steeple cast, you think it's just at casting ponds and that type of thing.
No.
It's all over the place. I mean, you don't have to do, you know, the one you see on TV steeple cast where it goes straight up in the air. You can just do it a little bit and get it up there. Change your approach, you know, your point of attack.
Okay, you're immediately getting drag right here.
Because it's straight across and
Right.
you have that situation. So what I would opt for in this particular spot, we have some different cross currents and things like that. It's probably a reach cast.
Right.
But I'm actually going to throw it out there and see if it works.
Right.
And that's one issue when you're fishing downstream. You can't really cast over here. You can measure your distance, but you're gonna see whether it works or not. And a lot of times, I recommend just taking it out of there before it goes over the fish.
Right, absolutely.
Because you kind of see what's going to happen. So.
Or if you make a bad cast, leave it on until it gets out of the area.
Exactly. So let's try a reach cast to the left.
Yes, very nice. Now you can let that float down into the lower quadrant.
This one happened to work out perfectly for
Yeah,
this
look
spot.
at that. Lines upstream. This is the kind of cast you'd use out of a boat.
Yep, exactly. Yep, it is drift boat fishing right here. And that one just particularly worked out well for here. You could also, I might also try an S cast, which is another form of aerial line.
Yep, very nice.
Just in case we have different cross.
Now, how did you do that? Let's walk through that little S cast for a second.
The S cast, if you have a fast current right here, slow current, fast current, this is going to work for you. The reach cast is going to work for you, but it's going to get eaten up by the current really fast, and it might actually create a belly quicker than you want. So you can actually time the S cast, which is coming up, and you're going to aerialize the mend again. But on its way out, you just take the tip of the rod and draw an S with it.
Right.
And it's really not that hard. It takes a little practice to get the muscle memory, but it's really not that hard.
Finesse in casting comes through practicing. The more you fish, the more you're going to get the any sport. You start getting the feel, and it becomes what? Automatic.
Yeah, it's built-in rope memory, and
Yes, it is.
and that's what's nice about it. That's when it becomes relaxing, and it's a great way to let energy out.
And you're not going to do this fishing twice a year.
No. And another thing is, this isn't going to work on your lawn.
Nope, it's not going to work on your lawn.
Because you don't understand how the different currents of the water are going. You can practice it, but you're not going to see how it applies.
One thing I want to, while we're talking about this slackline cast, I want to just shoot one upstream here, Pete, and show them something.
one of the problems when you're doing a lot of wade fishing, you're in deep water, and I'm going to go out here and do it here. Since the fish are already spooked, I can do this. If I cast a straight line cast like this, straight up, especially in fast current, where the line is real straight, it's going to immediately start pulling downstream. And we talk a lot about, the problems with drag, and it's mainly being pulled downstream when you're casting across. But this is actually coming right at you, and many times you never see this drag because the current is masking it. And by a slack line cast is when you make that cast just pulling back a little bit. And see how there's a little slack in the line right here? Watch it again. We come out, we just pull back a little, and I'm still following the line down. I'm following it down, but notice that there's a little slight, and of course I got to pick it up, otherwise again I'm going to have the same problem.
There's your line management again.
The line management. And it's a problem, and you notice it more when you get on big spooky fish in spring creeks with heavy water. So it's important to learn this slack line. Everybody says you want a nice straight cast, but not at times you want that straight cast until the very last minute when you sit down with the presentation. Line to settle down, and once you learn that back off the power, reach mends and slack line cast become a lot easier, don't it?
Oh, tons easier. I've heard it called a stop cast.
Yep.
Stop cast.
I don't like the word stop cast because people stop.
Too hard. When you're teaching, the semantics are bad for that.
Boom, right there, you just got a wind knot.
Bam, because it's a subtle come to a stop, and you got to feel it come to a stop. So it's, yeah, I agree. Of course, all these casts have, what, 10 different names?
Now, one of the casts that's so important, and I think this is before we go downstream and start fishing downstream, is one I call the roll cast pickup. So many people say you want a roll cast because there's things behind you. But one of the most important casts is be able to aerialize the line. And what I'm doing right here is just bringing the rod up. And one of the things about learning how to do a roll cast, which you cannot do on the lawn, right,
true.
Pete?
Yep, it's very difficult to do anywhere but on really good water conditions.
And if you do it on a pond without moving water, it's another situation too, because it changes the dynamics. Because see, look at this, it's coming back. If I wait too long and try to do it, oh boy, I'm going to end up tangling myself. So now what I want to do with this is I want to take a lesson from spey casting, which is making a bigger rod. And this is one of the hardest things for people to understand with graphite rods. Graphite rods are stiff, and spey rods are flexible.
Yep.
You need it to flex. So with our stiff graphite rods, we have to learn to roll cast a wee bit different. And we raise the line off the water and almost a little flick of the wrist, like this, and it's up, and then we can make the cast. Now, watch for a second here, this cast is coming out, and I'll tell you, Pete can immediately tell he hates this when somebody goes like that, don't you?
Oh yeah.
Pop.
Yep, it slams into the water.
Just because rather than let the thing go all the way through, they just pull it out and pop the water. Now watch what we can do with a little bit of a roll cast. Now we let the line go completely out of the fish's vision. Okay, we just bring it up, flick, right there. No movement of the water. It's so much that this roll cast can do for you. It's really not a roll cast, it's a roll cast pickup. Boom. Right here, I've got the line rather than pulling it out of the water like that.
Oh, I would say that should be something that's part of everybody's repertoire. You got to use that.
Again, raise the rod to make it a little longer, and then rotate that wrist. And you actually want to let this kind of go up. If you're looking at a clock, I kind of aim for like 10 o'clock. Aim for 10 o'clock, and once it's at 10 o'clock, you bring the rod back, and you're ready to go.
Yeah, and the reason that he's doing that too is he doesn't want to make a mistake of having the roll cast flip around and tick the water right by the fish, because it can happen if you do this too low.
Yep.
So make sure that you have an up motion with the whole thing. It keeps you aerialized, it keeps the whole thing going.
You'll watch a lot of fishermen that will fish downstream or off and sort of at an angle. And I almost had a theory about this. I think it happened a lot with guides who drift fish, because they know if they get the fly ahead of the boat downstream, what's going to happen.
No, the presentation is there as far as the fly coming down through there.
And you're going to catch more fish First of all, the fly gets there before the line gets there.
Exactly.
In other words, right now, if we cast upstream, Pete, what happens?
Well, there's commotion in the water. There's all sorts of presentation issues when you're right on the fish or right next to the fish. But when you're leading into the fish, it helps a lot. There are some spring creeks in Idaho that's the only way that you can catch a fish is to feed down to them.
As you can see right here. Now, I want to have you take us through all the different ways,
okay.
And then I'm going to show you a downstream cast that a lot of people haven't thought about. What do we get, a fish?
Yeah, you just had a fish take your fly.
We don't care about that stuff. We're teaching. This is about teaching, not about catching. All right, and folks, I want you to understand we're fishing. When we say downstream, we're really fishing sort of downstream. It's below us, right. But it's not pure downstream. Now I'm going to let Pete show you that, then I'm going to show you some pure downstream stuff.
Once again, what we have is something similar to drift boat fishing.
Right.
And I know not everyone drift boat fishes, but if you ever get in that situation, these are applicable to both things. So what I like to do is approach it kind of in the same situation that we approach these, except you kind of have an advantage here. You're probably not going to have any issues with your back cast. And also, if you're far enough up above the fish, they can't really see what's going on that's floating down to them. But beware, because if you walk down on them, they will see you because they're looking right up at you. Fish are 99% of the time, they're looking up current.
But they've got this, Pete, they've got this window though.
Right.
And they've got some blind areas in that because they're looking up into the sky.
Exactly.
So you can get fairly close to them, but once that fly gets into that window, and that window changes by the depth that they're at. So if they're rising and they're close to the surface, that window's going to be a lot smaller.
Yeah, and you can get surprisingly close. That's a question that I get a lot of times when I'm teaching is, how close can I get and how do you feel where the window is? And you can look at all the diagrams you want in science books and things like that about where their sight window is. The best way I know is to get a feel for each individual fish, where their sight window is.
It's obvious that a downstream cast is going to get the fly into the window first rather than the line.
Right.
And we accomplish this with a variety of casts. And first of all, the one that's slightly downstream, which is the upper lower quadrant, the way I like to put it.
Breaking it into quadrants.
The upper part, right out here. So show us that cast, Pete.
You can just lay it in there.
But you're going to get drag right here.
Right. And if you go straight line, you're going to get drag instantly.
Right.
So you're going to need to do the aerial mends that we were talking about before. Right. You can use these same casts all the way down through here. Let's do that. Let's aerialize the mend.
Backing off the power.
And I'm adding a little line too. I'm kind of
you just had a fish.
This is a reaction. I know we're in instructional mode, but
that's all right.
Got to do that, and I missed it, of course.
That's okay.
But anyway, back to that cast. If you got to aerialize the mend there, it's a nice one too. It's probably the one that I do first, I approach first when I'm walking up, especially if I'm working through a run pretty fast and I'm trying to be as effective as possible. So these aerial mends, I think, are the one thing that can make you a better fisherman. The one thing that you really need to grab.
And I want to tell you, folks, that little exercise that we showed you just a few minutes ago is how you learn to do it over and over again in your lawn. And so when you get out on a stream, like what Pete's doing, it's all automatic. Look how nice and soft that was. Trying to get that fish now, aren't you? But you know, there's no drag. See it drag, pull down.
Exactly. So this isn't the best cast for this spot right here.
Let's try. If you caught the fish, it would have been the best cast.
Yeah. Let's try to feed some line down to it. There's another option that you can actually morph these two casts into one cast. So let's do a reach cast.
You know, I love these youth here today. Morph.
And then
that wasn't even around when I was a kid.
And then feed a little line into it. And you can do it that way. So that's also an option. You can also go back to what I call the S cast or squiggle cast and try that same spot right there. Stop the rod. Now we got a nice long spot right there for that inside corner. And I can mend close to me too, which is a great option.
Using your rod tip.
Yep. Without moving the fly at all. So I get a nice presentation through there.
One of the things that's going to be hard for you out there when you first do this is that you're going to have the line hit the water very fast at first because it's going to be hard. You're going to try to do that back off too low in your cast. If you watch Pete do it here, it's higher in the cast.
I'll do one where it does an extreme tuck cast and flips over. Boom, like that. See how fast it came through? And you're going to be trying to back this off or feel it. Boom. See how fast that hits? If you're fishing a tiny dry fly, you don't want that to come in there. It does give you slack that you need, but it slams down pretty hard.
It's very important that you follow the rod all the way. If you watch Pete, he's going to follow it down to the water. It's a follow through like in any sport. See how he did that? Perfect. And of course, right now we're getting a little breeze, and that, of course, is that thing that we've said over and over again. Learn to accelerate and add a little bit more power. This is I don't know how you really tell people more about the practicing, but most people only practice on a good day.
Yeah.
You know, when it's not any wind out there.
It's getting late, it's windy.
Now, you practice this when it's windy and the fishing isn't very good and you're not catching anything. This is a time to cut off the big flies, put on something else, and go out and practice.
Yep, absolutely.
Okay, Pete, I've got one cast to add.
Okay.
It's a fishing cast, and it's really not much of a cast. It's more of a technique. And it was first shown to me by Mike Lawson on the Henry's Fork, when he had to have an absolute straight downstream cast. Now, I'm going to wait out here. I want you to pledge that if I go floating away, you're going to come get me.
I'll blow the siren.
All right, Pete, this is the cast. Now, I don't know whether we put any name to it or whatever, but we're right straight on the pot of fish that are rising. And what we're going to do is make just actually a short cast. We're going to bring the rod tip back. You can actually just pull it back if you wanted to.
Yep.
Just till you line it up with the fish. Now look what I've got here. I've got slack line. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to let the fly float, and I'm just going to feed line to it, just like you did on that last S cast. Feed line, and it's now gone over the fish. The fish didn't take it. I'm going to let the line go all the way over until it's out of the fish's window, and I'm going to reach out like this, and then it's going to water ski the fly.
Right.
It's going to water ski the fly over there. Now notice that I've got this here. I'm going to strip it right back. You may have to change the fly. It's a lot of these casts are a one-time deal or a two-time deal. But more than likely, you're going to get it the very first go-around. Like, here we go. And I kind of keep it close, so if you make a mistake and you don't quite get it, you can pick it back up. Now I'm out of the window here. I'm about 15 feet away. Now I like that one. So again, I pull it out. And you're going to find that, that time it floated away from them, you know, out of their window where they didn't see it. And you got to make sure that it gets all the way out. And so this way, all we have to do is just pull back on that rod, make a short cast till we line it right up again, and then just feed the line. It's just another sneaky way of trying to get on a fish from the upstream.
It's a great way to do it too. It just adds another
dimension.
Another dimension and another attack plan for you.
Another attack plan. The next thing I want to talk about is something that you do a lot of in the summertime, and I'll bet you can't guess what it is. It's called untangling, right?
Oh, there it is, yep.
And you do that a lot because you use both strike indicators and nymphs and double fly systems.
A lot of multiple flies, yep.
And I'd like to go downstream here. There's a perfect riffle for some nymphing. We can't ever eliminate tangles.
Right.
We can cut them down, right? I hate to hear somebody say, I don't like to fish multiple flies because what?
Because you're going to get tangled, but there are many ways that we can help prevent that, and a lot of good tips. Let's go give it a shot.
Okay, so we do it. Let's go on down there. All right, well, this is a very common way where a lot of people that are introduced to fly fishing, they get a big indicator, and there's every kind of indicator in the sun, but they all have one characteristic. That's drag.
Oh yeah.
That will slow and take out energy from your cast.
It's got a mind of its own. It drags your fly around. It's also, like you said, hard to cast it.
You know the cast that you need in any of this indicator fishing, and it's a cast that we're going to talk about in a few minutes when we start throwing some bigger flies. It's a deep loop. And it's not a wide loop. A lot of people say, oh, it's a wide loop cast. No. It's a deep loop. It's more energy in the loop. The tighter the loop, which is what you're supposed to have for the cast, is the problem on this, because the tighter the loop, the more chance you're going to catch your indicator.
Exactly. You're not trying to win a tight loop competition out here when you're casting this way. So.
And so the real key is your back cast, folks. And Pete's going to demonstrate this, casting these indicators, and I'm going to kind of talk through a few things as you take us through it.
Now sometimes you might see me also swing around in a little bit of a Belgian cast to try to open that loop up, because it kind of helps me throw a deep loop.
We keep bringing that Belgian in here.
I know. I'm not sure where it came from. It's kind of
Okay.
Kind of everywhere. See that pickup, how I kind of swing around?
Yep.
That's my way of kind of developing my
And
deep
that's
loop.
good. Now, but one of the important things here, folks, is getting that energy in that back cast. Now, let's not do the Belgian and just do a pickup cast. Get that deep loop. We want to throw that back with a lot of energy. There you go. See how he's pulling down here?
I pull the butt section of the rod down. I like to call it almost like you're chopping down with a butcher knife.
Yep.
Chop.
There you go. Okay, that's overemphasizing it. Now add your Belgian little touch there.
Okay, which is it just makes the pickup easier, and then you can come through and throw the deep loop there. Also
Okay.
gets the fly out of the way too.
Now
Either way it works.
You can still back off the power a little bit so your cast doesn't hit quite as hard.
And you can lay it right down. Yep.
But if you stop right up here and try to put too energy and too short a stroke, what's going to happen?
Oh, you're going to slam it down.
No, but you're also going to tangle that fly in with the indicator.
Well, the loop's going to collapse. Exactly.
That's right.
Exactly.
And how many times have you taken hooks out of the indicator?
That's one of the biggest problems next to the flies tangling.
And you know what helps you is that the weight of the indicator actually will help you make that cast. It'll want to pull out.
Mm-hmm. That's a good point.
All right, now let's talk about when it hits on the water. You were talking about you're immediately going to get drag, aren't you?
You are, and
look at that right there.
We talked about
Belly.
before aerial mending and adding loops and stuff to your presentation before it lands. You can do that with this too. It's a lot harder because you got this rig that you're throwing a deep loop with, but you can also throw it down and throw your mend in right away. I mean, like right away, right after it lands. So we're going to pick up a leaf here, but throw it in and get it in there early.
Yes.
And it's okay to move that, drag mend that a little. It's no big deal because
Well,
the
look
fish
how
aren't going
nice
to eat
the
that.
drip. Now he's fishing it downstream again. Now, can you cast that downstream the same way? Let's see, with a little bit of a reach mend cast.
A little bit of a reach mend cast.
Now notice how he pulled and took the rod tip up. Very important. Watch again.
Slack line cast.
Yeah, look how the rod tip went up there. Whoa, beautiful. And see, yeah, you're not going to get a real long, but you don't need it a lot of times. Immediately what's going to happen is that fish is going to grab the fly and you're going to see that indicator go downstream rather than straight down.
Right, you know right where he is. I mean, you only need so much to get through there. And you can also add it to a cast that's across and bring it all the way down so you get a longer float that
And
way.
what I want to do while we're standing out here, Pete, in this beautiful stream, is talk about another way that we do indicator fishing. And this is a very common way. It's two flies. Now, I know that you fish the South Fork and you use a lot during the middle of the season, a lot of two dry flies.
Dry dropper, yep.
And where you use actually two dry flies, but this is probably the most common rig, right? The nymph dry. And this is going to be heavy, this is going to be light. And invariably, I watch people try to do like this, and the same techniques are going to cause you a problem if you do too much false casting.
False casting is not your friend here.
On this one is a problem because we got a dry fly. We can't slam that into the water. So what happens a lot of times, people stop right here to try to get it to settle down because of that nymph. And I'll tell you, first of all, you're going to get wind knots.
It's going to kick, the dropper's going to kick around and wrap. Yep.
And they're going to catch and try to mate.
Mm-hmm. That's one of the biggest
so
problems.
again, a longer stroke, we're going to add more energy, we're going to shorten that. I say longer stroke, I'm going to change that a little bit. It's actually a shorter stroke, but it's longer. Look how the rod tip is going up in the air. I'm throwing the line up into the air. See right to there, and I'm coming down into the air, I'm pulling back on the rod and it's settling. It caused the nymph to roll over rather than the dry fly to hit and the nymph to hit back towards you.
Exactly. That's a great point right there.
As you come up, now look at the angle of where we're at. Now look at the difference if we do a traditional overhead. Oh, there you go. What can I see? Look up. Does that look familiar?
Oh, I can sense it coming. I don't even. I can just like, oh, here it comes, and then loops on itself and it's tangled.
So what you want to do, if you have to make a false cast, you point it up, you follow it. Look how my arm. Look at right here. If I stop it right here, look how my arm is. How long is my rod right now?
10 feet, 10 and a half feet, because you.
Well, if it was yours, it'd be 14 feet.
Yeah,
but a little
right.
critter like mine.
Well, you've added a foot and a half.
Very important. We've added leverage.
Yep.
As we come by. Now watch, if I back off, I can pull it back. Look how it landed. And you know, this is some of the best fishing that you're going to have, especially when you're fishing to rising fish.
Oh, it's great. I mean, it's probably the best option that we have out west is dry dropper. I love it.
And it's getting to be common amount. You know, you fish in the World Fly Fishing
Yep.
Championship, and in Spain, that was the thing that got us in the running, wasn't it?
That was the thing. The cool thing was the Americans did a lot of dry dropper fishing, and the Europeans really weren't into it that much. And it really gave us an advantage because the fish were spooky in
Yep.
Spain, and we had to get nymphs over them, but we couldn't just storm up on top of them with traditional like Polish nymphing styles. And so that was our ability to get over there and get right over into their feeding lane.
One of the things I want to talk to you about is minimizing your false cast over fish. And one of the ways that I do it, and you had talked about it when we first started, is that we're out here and like the fish is right up there rising.
Right.
Oh boy! Now I want you all to know that you never know when you're going to catch a fish.
How come that doesn't happen to me?
Well, what do we have here, folks?
It's a nice fat whitefish.
Hey, a whitey! Rocky Mountain whitefish.
Idaho mountain whitefish.
Yep.
He looks healthy.
Yeah, it looks healthy. Loves nymphs, doesn't he?
Yeah.
We've got a fish rising up there.
Okay.
And if I take and put this fly line over him like this, I can put him down.
Absolutely.
I want to do one cast. So one of the things I'll do, especially when I'm stocking like this, I'll come up like this and I'll measure my cast out, Pete, right behind it. And I'll keep it out of the water and say, there's a fish there. I'll go 1, 2, boom. And I've already measured my cast.
Right, behind you, so you know you got it.
And you were measuring over here. That's another way to do it. But why not stock with your line behind you? And this is a technique that we use when we do spring creek. So we don't do a lot of false casting. It's already measured, already have the line out, and we know the distance. We can throw one over like that just to test it. But boom, pull down, and it works so good with a dry dropper technique.
Plus you've added another component, which is the water load, which is real effective. I mean, it's
very effective.
It's a nice cast. There's not a lot of false casting. I mean, it basically eliminates the false cast.
It does, but of course you got to have water.
Yeah, and a little bit of moving water.
And I can do it up the bank too. I can just stay on the bank and let the fly line go here and just kind of walk there. Every once in a while it does happen like that whitefish.
Yeah.
You know,
swinging flies.
Swinging flies, that's
works.
right. Well, you know, we've been using indicators here, Pete, and as we all know, you're on Team USA, and it was Slovakia 2004,
right.
And you did the best of the U.S. team, and it was nymph fishing.
Absolutely.
But it was nymph fishing without an indicator.
Yep, you're not allowed to use an indicator, and personally I wouldn't choose to use one in those situations.
Why? You get more fish?
I just think you have more options without an indicator. You have more presentation options without an indicator.
I notice right now you've set up some European nymphing. You've got an anchor nymph, a heavy nymph,
yep.
and you've got another nymph up here. These are really heavy. In fact, you could add several nymphs on this, couldn't you?
Yeah, I often fish with 3 nymphs in the competitions in Europe.
But that creates a casting nightmare.
You better know what you're doing as far as how you're gonna, basically you're doing a lot of lobbing of casts. It's a skill for sure.
Well, why don't you, I just noticed behind there, that's a perfect Euro nymphing
That
run.
is a Euro nymphing run if I've ever seen one.
So let's go down there and let's show everybody how you do this lob cast.
Let's give it a shot.
Well, let's see this casting technique and how it relates to fishing.
This is a perfect situation where you have advantages over a strike indicator, I feel, because you can move a lot faster, you can cover more water, and you can get the fly to where the fish are faster, okay? Because you're not necessarily setting up your indicator with mends and things like that. I have very little line out of the end of the rod. I'm changing it a little bit for this situation, and the cast I'm going to make is a lob, and you really don't have a lot. You're just basically lobbing the weight of your flies either in a backhanded cast, depending on which side of the river you're on, or you can do it from the side too and flip it over that way. You can add as much as 20, 30, 40 feet of line depending on how good you are at the lob, but I'm going to stick with something real basic here. So let me demonstrate this a little bit.
It's also good when you have a lot of brush behind you too.
It's a great technique for anything. It's not just if you're in Europe fishing for grayling. I mean, you can use this for almost anything, and it has been used for, for 50 plus years. you got to have tension before you can load the rod to lob
Right.
it up. It's just key. You can't pick up a slack line.
Just like a roll cast.
Exactly.
Tension of the water.
So I'm going to flip it over. This is actually an easy lob right here.
Yep.
And I'm just Euro nymphing right now.
Now you're slightly pulling the nymph just a little bit faster than the current.
Right, and you'll see it looks strange. It looks like, hey, there's drag on that fly. Well, that's on purpose.
Yep.
Because basically you're in touch with the flies,
Right.
with what you're fishing.
You're going to feel a strike. You're going to get 80% of the strikes, or 80% of the takes, you're going to get a chance to hook them. Where on an indicator, you may only get 30 or 40% of the takes.
You see how I kind of do a big windmill?
Yep.
I'm actually loading it from out here and flipping it around.
Pete, I've noticed you just fished the closer water. And then what do you keep adding line and going out farther, right?
Yeah, it's one of the options that you can do with Euro nymphing, is you can actually add a little line to each cast and work your way out, especially if you can't access it.
Okay, so let's see some longer casts.
Okay, let me add a little line on the next one here.
Okay. Okay, notice you're raising your rod up right here. You're giving it a little pull there at the end.
Yep.
Raising the rod up.
See how I shot a little line? And
Yep.
you can certainly just lob it over to add your line too that way. And now I'm fishing an extra 15 feet. I gotta pull my line in a little, but there we go.
It's just bumping right on the bottom, isn't it?
Yep.
And your cast is so important that you have it upstream. Okay, again, you're just throwing in a min when you make that cast. There you go, reaching out. Now, if you did an overhead cast, not only would the flies come crashing into the rod, but they would not be at that same angle, would they?
Exactly, that's a great point right there. You got a lot of options with this lob right here. Not to mention, look how fast I can fish if I'm moving up this area right here.
Yep.
I can just cover this, lead with it a little.
You're really covering the water better than any other method, because each time you can add 6 inches and move out. Really a terrific nymphing technique.
Also, you can let it swing on the downswing.
And of course, with the heavy flies that you put on, there's no need of sinking lines. You're getting right on the bottom.
Right, and I use a smaller diameter tippet.
What a lot of anglers don't realize, that sinking lines in fast streams just really don't help you. Oh, and you got to fish. Hey.
And you bring them in, slide
Yep.
them on in.
Yep.
Little brown trout.
That might even have counted in the World Championships.
This is a probably what, 8-inch, 7-inch fish?
7-inch fish. They go by centimeters over there.
Yep.
But you know, you would have never felt that fish with an indicator, would you?
That's the beauty of a technique like this with a lob. The Europeans figured it out, is that I'm in full contact with my flies.
And you know,
I felt that guy and just kind of set him and brought him in, and you can see how close you are to the fish as well, which is nice because you don't play out a lot of fish. You know, you can basically hurt a fish by playing them out from a long distance. This way you can bring them in, release them, get them on their way pretty quick.
It's just a great technique. Now, longer rod, a lot of the Europeans will use rods up to even 12 feet.
Yeah, they will. And basically what it does is it gives you more reach. One of the secrets to the Euro nymphing is staying in certain water columns, or certain feeding lanes, actually, I should say. This is the columns, this is the lanes this way. And you can really control that if you're underneath the tip of your rod. And so let's say that you can't wade any further, or you don't want to approach the fish. Well, with a 10-foot rod, you get an extra foot or so, and that's why they do that. And they'll go all the way down to 4 foot, or 4-weight 10.
Yeah.
4-weight 10 foots, exactly.
One thing I want to, before we leave this, is to understand that this technique, while the hallmark of competition fishing, is really a terrific way of fishing when the fishing gets tough, especially cold weather, inclement conditions. And the indicator fishing just isn't something that you could fish shore in here. Now, what I'm going to do right now is go with the big stuff. And one of the problems that we have with casting streamers or woolly buggers or anything is that we have a couple situations that can happen. And that is split shot. Pete, how many times have you seen a split shot or a cone head fly or something hit a rod and shatter it?
It's one of the most common ways to break a rod.
And one of the things that I've found is a new way of fishing and taking the split shot away. Now, if you're in Yellowstone Park, you can't use lead.
A lot of places you can't.
And this replacement tin isn't all that heavy.
Right. Exactly, it's not a good option in a lot of situations where you need to get it down.
And what I've done is, again, we've spent a lot of time in Europe, Pete and I, with the World Fly Fishing Championships, and a lot of people ask, what have they done for us in the fly fishing? What has competition done for us? Well, one of the things that brought us bead-headed nymphs.
Yeah.
The Belgian team introduced us when they
gold heads.
Lead.
They call them gold heads.
Yeah, the gold heads. But what they've given to us is sinking leaders. This is a poly leader. A lot of different brands out there, and essentially this is about 2 split shot. 2 split shot. Now it's dark, it's hard for you to see that, and you can get them in different weights. This happens to be a 6, one of the heavier ones. You can get them in intermediate, which just means just a little under, like maybe 1 split shot.
Right.
This is not going to break my rod, and I can use a shorter leader. I attach to that just some monofilament line here. Well, this makes it a lot easier to cast. If you start casting a streamer and you got a 9-foot leader, you're going to have a problem.
Oh, absolutely.
And I have this attached to an intermediate tip line, and I want to show you some of the casts with streamer fishing using this wonderful leader. It's going to be easier to cast than about 3 split shots. And I've got a heavy fly on here. This is a cone-headed Kiwi muddler right here. That's a
that's a great streamer.
That's a weapon, though.
It is. It's heavy. It's heavy.
So let's take a look at some of these casts by going out here. We've got a couple good spots here. One of the things that you'll find with your streamer cast, Pete, and you do a lot of it, is most of the time you're going to be going across and downstream. It's almost the same technique of your European nymphing. We're going to pull the fly with the current. Again, why?
So you stay in contact with your fly.
Boy, you said the word, contact, staying in contact. And we want it to also imitate the minnow.
It helps it swim.
There's no way those minnows are going to swim up this stream, are they?
No, not this part, especially right here.
Okay, now the first thing you're going to realize is that casting a big heavy fly is false casting is not something that's going to be in the program. If you're going to do something like this, you've got to wait for that fly to straighten out. And you've got to put more energy in this back cast. Again, it's like throwing the indicators. We're going to increase the energy. We're going to deepen the loop by putting more energy in that cast. We're going to come up and stop and point into the loop. Well, Pete, you know, the important thing, again, no false casting. This roll cast pickup comes incredibly important on the streamer fishing, because if you pick this fly up like this, whoa, I noticed that. Has your name on it, doesn't it?
I'm just built to duck that thing.
So what we're going to do is accelerate it up, come back up like this. Notice the trees behind us here.
Yeah,
if I go right here, whoops, I got
pretty good brush right behind us right now.
So what we're going to do is that we're going to change our casting angle. Instead of, again, right here, we're going to almost tilt ourselves. We're going to go up. We're going to increase more energy here. We're actually pointing into the loop. Pointing into the loop, so when that fly comes up, you're actually straight in line with the fly.
Oh yeah, I can see where that would be effective in this situation right here.
We're straight in line with the fly. Here we go. And then we come down, we pull down on the rod. Again, that pull down cast. And as you get really good at casting these streamers, what you'll even do is be able to do a downstream mend in it. Now when I cast here, I reach out. Now we got a downstream mend and we've been going upstream mend.
Well, a lot of people are confused on that one. They're saying, whoa, wait, you can mend downstream too?
Of course you can, because what do we want the streamer to do? We want it to swim downstream. Right now it's swimming downstream, and I'm giving it a little action and working it back across. It's going to swing back across. Our cast is incredibly important. Now, here we go. We're going to use our roll cast. Now, say if you have it right here, watch how we do with our roll cast. We're going to pump it up in the air, come back, shoot the line over, follow it with our rod tip, strip it back, and again, keep it in contact.
Right.
And when you get really good at this, the more you do it, you're going to find you do the same thing what you did. I lobbed it over there, and I picked it up without even doing a roll cast. Your lob cast is important in streamer fishing too. Now, I'm going to try it. What I try to do when I fish a streamer, I see brown trout laying in under there. So I'm going to increase my
looking spot.
cast. Again, I'm going to go up here, back up and across, keeping in contact. And another cast I'm going to do, again, I'm going to roll cast it out. I'm not so worried about spooking the fish. Boom, hitting it over and letting that current pull it back around. There we go, back around. Now, you know, we talked about streamers, but you know, there's another thing you use a lot is woolly buggers.
Oh yeah.
And dead drifting,
I fish
same
them as
type of
nymphs,
thing.
yeah. I fish them in a nymphing style all the time.
This sinking leader,
Yep.
woolly bugger on there, and we're going to again do the same type of thing, almost like your lob over like this. And now we're going to keep a rod high and let it dead drift down. Same thing what a split shot would do. Again, keeping a little loop of line, and a lot of times I'll have a little loop right here, and then I can actually feel when the fish takes, boom.
Yep, and you're in contact with it. Also, holding your rod up gives you a little more access a little further. You can see that just waiting right here, I mean, you got 1 foot in the grave and the other one on a banana peel, right? If you're out in the middle of that stuff. So just elevating the rod also gives you a little more reach.
Again, I'm going to do the same thing. Again, back out, up, around, cast, high rod tip. Steelhead fishermen do this an awful lot.
Yep.
Downstream swing. That downstream swing is a very popular. And again, being able to come out of this so that you can get your line moving back and through again. The main thing, I think if I could tell all of you out there, is you can't bring that rod back like this. The more you bring it back, you've got to learn to bring it up rather than back, because nothing's worse, and we've all been there, you've been in a drift boat when this has happened, is to have this cast go right back and hit you in the back of the head, because it's coming at this angle, and I'll tell you, all it takes is one time.
Yeah, and a lot of the results from too wide of a casting arc, which is what you're talking about, is the whole chuck and duck phenomenon, because it's coming through.
That's right.
If you have too wide of a casting arc for this type of situation, it's going to cause you trouble. I mean,
Again, bring that rod tip up. Bring that rod tip up, pull down, and this is where a haul comes in. When I come in, watch, I pull down, and that can shoot the line. Again, back up, pull down, shoot the line. Streamer fishing can be quite fun, especially if you don't hit yourself in the head, and be quite productive. It's my favorite fishing when you're going after big fish. I really enjoy it. Well, Pete, we've got some more casts to show everybody. I think it's time to head back upstream.
let's do it.
And maybe look at some more of our casting for fishing.
Let's give it a shot.
Well, we've just come from the Boise River in Boise, Idaho with Pete Erickson. Now, Pete's going to take us to another part of the world. We're going into Oregon on a high desert mountain stream, where we're going to fish for some spooky brown trout and rainbow. And we're going to learn from Pete some of the presentation casts and what you've got to do to go after the hard to catch fish, and how fly casting can help you accomplish that. Hey Pete, thanks for bringing me up here. There's some nice fish laying right in these runs here. They're feeding on baitus.
This little stretch has a lot of nice fish. They tend to be a little spooky though.
Yes, I can tell. These high desert streams are wonderful, very productive, but very hard to fish.
Yeah, your presentation and your casting, they got to be right on, or else the fish are just going to say bye-bye.
Well, we've talked so much about the basics, and we've gone through different types of casts on the Boise River. This is different. Those casts can mask some of your inadequacies in the presentation, but you got to be perfect here, don't you?
You do, and also look at the weeds we have on both sides. That just adds a lot of fun to it, doesn't it?
Well, there's two ways that we can approach this. Number one, you can go with a lighter line rod.
Right.
A 2-weight, 3-weight, 4-weight. This would be a little 5-weight would be kind of pushing it, wouldn't it?
I think so, because the line's going to hit the water pretty hard. Even if you use a double taper line, it's still going to hit the water hard enough to maybe spook a fish.
You have a 3-weight, I have a 4-weight. I've got a long leader. I've got an 18-foot leader. A lot of people are going to have a lot of trouble, more than a lot of trouble, casting an 18-foot leader. But we're gonna talk to you a little bit how to set that up, how to get it all ready for an 18-foot leader, And in fact, let's show them right now. Take leader, but more sections of heavy leader and add it to it. In other words, rather than buy a 14-foot leader, and there's all kinds of leaders, which again is the same material made longer.
Right.
What we'll do is add sections on. If we want to, let's say we want a 16-foot leader, we'd add maybe 3 sections. Start at 35, 30, 25 pound down, and now we've got our 6
build
foot.
down.
Add your 9-foot leader, maybe cut a little of it off. Voila, you got a 15-foot leader that'll actually turn over.
Right, because it tapers down.
Right, it's called compound leader, and believe it or not, folks, it will cast so much better than adding a long 16-foot tapered leader. That compound system will roll it over and make it work for you. I've set that leader up exactly the way that we set it up on the Boise. I've got an 8-foot butt section. This is about 18 feet long leader. Now you've just got a traditional rig.
I do. I have about a 13-foot leader with a dry fly on it.
Aha, okay. So we both have long leaders, which means we're going to have to change our casting style a little bit.
Yep. You're gonna have to do at least 4 or 5 different things with your casting with the long leader.
But also we have approach too, which is still a part of your cast, how you approach. And we've got to be worrying about the fly line going over the fish here, don't we?
Absolutely. If they see the fly line come over the top of into their sight, their field of sight, it's going to spook them. They're going to go for their big run, and you're going to be chasing fish instead of casting to fish.
Okay. Well, I'd like you to take us through some of the cast.
Well, the most important part when you're approaching a stream like this, obviously you got glass water in this situation, so presentation is going to be really, really important. That's why I've got a 3-weight, got a long leader. It tapers down to about 6x, and a pretty small dry on there. First thing you have to do is figure out where the fish is. The nice part about a situation like this where the water's glassy is that oftentimes you can see them rising, so that makes your job easier. When you see the fish rise, and I've seen a fish rise just kind of right out in the middle there, just as the current's kind of coming around the corner, just a little bit. So I know where the fish is. Next thing I have to do is how do I approach that fish? And one thing you gotta watch out for when you're approaching a fish is making a lot of noise with your feet, stomping around, moving boulders around. Just the vibrations will send the fish off on a run. Next thing is, if you're standing up, you can walk right into the field of vision of this fish, and that's another thing. So I like to approach from behind and off to the side a little bit. Okay, so I'm actually not quite where I want to be with this fish, but I'm going to move just a little bit closer.
Now, Pete, do you do a lot of long casting in this situation?
I do. Jack, what I like to do is get as close as I possibly can to a tough fish. However, you can't always do that. Sometimes you have to make a 30, 40-foot cast. It's nice to get as close as you can because then your presentation is going to be a lot easier.
And you're going to hook them easier too.
Yeah, absolutely. But you'll learn in a hurry how close you can get to certain fish on certain rivers.
That's right.
On this river, we can probably get within 30 feet, between 20 and 35 feet. So slowly walk up to the fish. Keep an eye on them too. One thing that I used to make a lot of mistakes with is I'd take my eye off the fish and look around for other fish, look back there, don't see the fish anymore. So, aha, there he is. He's cooperating with me, and he's
Yes,
rising up there. So I'm going to get just a little bit closer, and I like to start getting down at this point. I don't want to take any chances.
One of the things that's very important is to practice this out on your lawn, casting on your knees. Now he's going to use one leg up to kind of brace himself. If he's on both knees, he's going to be a little unstable.
Okay. Next thing I want to do is, am I comfortable? Are there too many weeds around me? I think I'm going to move just a little bit further up, which if you inch along, you're not going to make too much noise. Okay, now I'm set. Now I'm comfortable in this spot right here. I'm down low. I've got the rod down low. Another thing is, make sure that you're not doing a lot of this while you're moving around. You'll learn the hard way that the fish take off.
I think, Pete, too, you want to watch that fish and see how he rises and see if he's staying in one place.
And while I'm getting set up, that's a good time to do it. It's a great time to do it is while you're getting set up and you're measuring out your line, you can actually get the rise pattern. You can actually see, is he coming up every 3 seconds? Is he coming up every 5 seconds? That's a big part because I want to present that fly on that 3rd or 4th second when he's on his way up. Why would I throw the fly in there after he's taken a fly and he's already gone down? So I'm going to measure out my line.
And he's going to check to see what's in his back cast, which is me, and I'm going to get out of his way. But I could be really easy, be one of those weeds or those nasty fly grabbers that could be right here.
Exactly.
So he's got to take that in consideration.
Exactly, and I'm basically going to measure my cast out behind me. I'm not going to take any chances with casting across here. Also got some weed issues. I'd rather just throw it down here this way. So, and I don't want to get it too far up there. So I'm going to shoot it back here. This looks about right. I'm not really worried about my fly. I can dry it off with a nice one little false cast will dry it off. Okay, now I'm going to come over to the left.
Short stroke cast, really important.
And I'm out of the field of vision of the fish right now. Okay.
Notice how the tip of the rod is working. That's because he's waiting the line straighten out behind him.
And I'm going to add a little more line. I'm adding a little bit of a haul right now, but that's okay. And notice that I've gone down to the side. I don't want this rod up here over the top. Okay? I'm rotating the plane of my rod down to the side. And as soon as I feel like I have the right distance, I'm going to lay it right over the fish at this angle right here.
Nice, delicate presentation. Noticed how his line just landed very softly, all together like beautiful music, right on the water. That's because he backed off the power just slightly and followed through. And if his line would have hit with the middle part, it would have caused wake and it would have spooked the fish. Again, a beautiful, delicate presentation.
Okay, now that cast right there, I kind of missed the feeding lane of the fish. And it makes me a little nervous to go straight across to him. So what I think I'm going to do is do a little roll pickup here. I can also kind of dry my fly off. And what I'm going to do is add a reach cast over to the side and see if I can sneak on into the side here. Let me check my fly. Everything looks good. Dry it off. Add a little line. And there it is. A little bit of weeds, but that's okay. I didn't move the fly. And you can still always constantly work your presentation.
Let's take a look at that cast again in slow motion and go through what he actually did. As you can see, he raises his rod up, changed the direction of his cast, and then with his second false cast, he moved and backed off the power high and then reached out and laid the line down. Look how beautiful that cast was. Beautiful. Again, a nice reach. Look how the line landed upstream. He's now working over the mends, getting in control of the line. It's very important. It's going right over the fish. Notice how he's following the rod tip where the fly is. That's very important. That's another part of your fishing cast is after you do it. What will a long leader accomplish for you? It'll allow you to cast over fish. The fly line will cast a shadow, block light, imitate the movement of a bird, where a leader is very, very soft, very fine, and will not spook the fish.
Another option I have is to throw a little slackline cast at this fish. Got a little wind coming at me, and instead of a reach cast, I'm going to stop the rod and let it float back down. Some people like to call that a tuck cast. Basically what it does is if you stop the rod early and then come down with the tip of the rod, it gives you a little bit of slack line. And that's a great way to get rid of drag as well.
The slack line cast, you hear a lot of it. It covers a variety of different types of casts. Everybody tries to put the names to these casts, but it really is backing off the power and then using your rod tip, because the rod tip is what directs the line to place it where you want to go. If you watch Pete's casting, he backs off the power in various places, then follows through and places it where he wants it to go. In a slack line cast, he casts, backs off and even pulls it towards him and then drops it down. Moving that rod around after you back off the power is what we call a finesse cast, and it doesn't happen on the stream practicing it. It means you practice it and practice it away from fishing. So when you're in this situation, you're not going to choke.
Now I'm going to throw a slackline cast here and back off the power a little bit. Boom, right there, back it off. What that does is it gives me a little slack. I can manage my line real quickly, and I do not have instant drag when it lands like you would with a straight line cast. That's a nice option right there.
Pete, I noticed in these presentation casts, you're not doing any mending on the water. You're just lifting the rod and kind of repositioning the line.
The only mend I might do is if a current grabs the line and does something unexpected, but nope, I'm gonna aerialize most of the mends here because I just can't afford to spook the fish with a water mend. And it's really important that you aerialize your mends. It's hard from sitting down low, and that's just a challenge that you have. It makes it fun, but it's really important that you aerialize the mends.
Pete's using a 3-weight rod. A 3- and 4-weight rods are almost essential for this. And there's something that's important about using this rod, and is that you have to use a little bit longer stroke to get more energy on your backstroke. It's still a short stroke, and we're still not going back too far. But what we're doing is we're taking that cast up, because it's not as stiff a rod as some of our other rods that we have, like a 6 or 7 weight rod, 5, 6 or 7 weight rod. What happens as you go back in your cast, you add a little bit more energy right there. Rather than coming to a stop to transfer the energy, we add just a little bit. You'll see it. When he does that cast, he'll come back and add a little bit, almost a little axial flick of the wrist, so that softer rod, and it'll open up. Even though he's right here, you'll see him, it's not bending a wrist. And that's something that really confuses people. But he's actually tilting his arm back so that the line flattens out. One of the characteristics of these light lines is their tapering. If you're only going to cast like 15 to 20 feet in a really, really small stream, a double tapered's fine. But a traditional weight forward in this small line is not going to do it for you. Almost all the line manufacturers have Spring Creek type lines. They're little mini weight forward, or little mini heads as we call it, designed to just aerialize a little line and shoot it. Everybody's making it. The one that I have worked with is the Cortland Clear Creek line, which is, again, designed. It was the first line designed for Spring Creek fishing. Now everybody's got it.
Another cool piece of presentation information is called a dragman, or what I call a dragman. You lay that fly down just slightly past the feeding lane of the fish, and as soon as it lands, you drag it into place so that it goes right over the top of the fish. You're doing this above the fish so he doesn't get spooked and doesn't see it, and then you're all set. You got to be really gentle when you drag it, or else you'll sink the fly. But it's a great option.
There's something else that Pete will be doing here, and it sometimes confuses people, and that is what we call side cast. And you'll hear people say, don't sidearm. There's a difference. Swinging the rod like this without locking your wrist is sidearming. But to make a cast where you lock the wrist and change the casting plane, I'm up here, I'm going to start tilting myself, and as long as all the integrity of the cast remains on the same axis here, and I bring the rod back, I can make casts that'll go underneath bushes that can stay out of the fish's vision. Now, Pete's going to demonstrate that.
The important part of a side cast is to make sure that you tilt that plane, the same plane that you're doing with the overhead cast, tilt it over to the side. Let me give you a shot. I'm going to bring it over gradually. There I am over the top. I'm coming down. Notice I'm not using a lot of wrist, and I'm trying to stay in the same plane until I get to the side. A little bit of wind here, but you can still do it. In fact, the wind's not going to hurt us here.
When you notice Pete's cast, I want you to watch the rod tip. How as the plane changes, his rod tip stays in the same position. A lot of anglers will dip the wrist too far back and they end up catching all the weeds that are only like 6 inches off the ground. It's because they want to dip. When they go to the side, they want to dip the rod tip too far back. Look at Pete's, it's in the same plane. Line is still staying up, and he makes his cast. Pete just has a fish that's now a little bit out of the casting range. He's going to stretch his cast, and this comes into the most important part of getting better at fly casting, and that's shooting the line. He's a pretty short dude there right now. He's about 4 foot high. So what's going to help him is a little bit of what we call the hauls. We've talked about this already. The double hauls, the single hauls, we call them the jerks and the pull. As you can see right now, even with a little 3-weight, it can be very effective, pulling down on the line, increasing the line speed, and making it happen. Pete just put out a 50-foot cast with a 3-weight because he knew how to do the hauls. Let's take a look at that. You see, I'm just casting the leader and I can do that. So you should be able to cast the, look at that fish come by. Just, you know, I've caught fish just casting the leader. You know, you can do that. So you don't have to worry about spooking a fish, catch just the leader. Okay, now with these light lines doing this, you're going to end up having to do more false casting because you got to get the line out. Got to get a little bit of the weight of the line out. Now look what I'm doing here. I'm going to increase the length of my rod. I'm going to go back, let it go. It's going to be a lot of wind resistance.
Right.
So I've got to let that rod go back and make sure that the line straightens out. And that's probably the hardest thing for people to understand. If you start rushing this, you're going to tangle up. Now I've got 2 flies on with an 18-foot leader. I lock that cast, I go back, making sure, I'll even follow it back a little bit by adding that line into the tip, okay? And now there we go. We've just thrown you know, a really nice cast with an 18-foot leader.
Nicely done.
There are places which you're going to use a long leader. If you're going to get a chance to do some fishing in Canada where they don't allow you to put on lead weights or strike indicators and you need to get down deep, this will get you down deep. And spooky fish, nothing better than a long leader, as long as you can handle it. Again, on your forward cast, a little bit lower in the cast will do it. As we can see, I think I had a fish take that. But I can't tell, I cast it so far away I can't see it. All right, Pete. I think these folks need to know a little bit about, because that's going to help you. Even with these longer casts, what I'm going to do right now, I'm going to pull down and shoot that line. Look how that helped me.
Yep, nice haul. Nice tug down.
I know you have a nice way of teaching it, and I think let's go show the folks how to do it. Well, Pete, we've come to the end of the presentation on casting. It's been great having you a part of this video. Now is where it comes down to the test. You can learn about casting, but when you get in a situation like we are today, it's now mid-November. We're on a desert Oregon stream. There are some big fish working on the Cabelas. There's some fish probably bigger than most you've ever seen in your life fishing. They're huge. And this is where the knees start knocking, the hands shake, a little coolness in the air. This is the test of how well you learn to cast. And this is where the casting really becomes important.
It really does. This is where all the practicing gives you an advantage, because you're not nervous, you're not thinking about the casting as much. You're thinking about good presentation to the fish, and you're thinking about how you're going to approach the fish and all that stuff too.
I noticed that you've gone light.
Absolutely. When you don't have water that has a lot of current in it, you got to go light. With your line, with your tippet sizes, you got to lengthen your leader a little bit. Use lighter flies in a lot of situations.
And the casting becomes really important, doesn't it?
You got to have finesse.
And so light line, we got a 3-weight rod, we got some big fish. Let's see how it's done now, buddy.
Let's give it a shot. Every time there's a fish rising and you have a chance to put them down, it gives you a little bit of a thrill, a little bit of butterfly in your stomach. That's why we keep coming back to it. Okay, we're gonna approach these fish.
You can get down even on your knees, can't you?
Measure our line off. You can see they're coming up, taking these Cabelas. And you can, if you have a good place, you can get down on your knees. Got kind of a little bit of deep water here, but I'm gonna try. There we go.
Lower your profile. Test your cast.
Get my line out there below where the fish are just to make sure. That looks like about right over there, so make sure we don't have anything on it. You always have to deal with weeds. I'm gonna do that Belgian cast that we talked about.
Yeah, you got a little bit of willows behind you.
I do. I gotta make sure and shoot that cast up high. I'm going right through some of the fish here. And it's pretty shallow, so always check. When you see that fly go down, if you're fishing a dry dropper, you gotta check.
Absolutely.
If it's a fish, you're on it, you're setting them. So there we go, we're working with weeds. This is something that you gotta get used to.
You know, it doesn't hurt to have a buddy help you. When you use small streams, you can have somebody spot for you, something we do a lot of in Spring Creek.
Figure out my distance again.
The longer leader can allow you to cast over these fish.
And I'm gonna go right back in because it's tough here. Let's see. And that nymph's just hanging right underneath the dry. Nothing on that one?
Yep, might be a little long on that.
I might have to readjust this. Yeah, a little long. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna readjust my dropper nymph so that it's the right length.
Be observant. It's really important to keep even when you're tying a fly on, to kind of watch below you. You'll be surprised when you're at the low profile like Pete is, how a fish will swim up right below you and start feeding.
And you see them too. They'll come right up on you and you got to just kind of freeze for a second.
In this video, we've talked about casting and we talked about observation. And one of the ways to learn about casting positions is to watch good fishermen and how they approach different situations. You know, some of our great tailwater fisheries like the green and the bighorn and the Deschutes have a lot of anglers, and you can watch the anglers. They're great teaching experiences just by watching how people approach different fish, different fishing situations even. Look like a lot of fish taking emergers too.
Yep, they're moving around. And here we are in such,
not all the pros get the fish every time, do they?
Grabbed it, and I missed him, and now I got a little weeds on there again.
Yeah, always a good time to check for wind knots when you bring it in.
I like
your
to
hand
take a
down
little
the leader.
Take a little visible look. It looks good. I got these weeds behind me, the brush, the willows that make it tough. So I got to stay up over the top, no sidearm. Let's see what we got here. No takers yet. And more weeds. Lots more weeds. Okay, Jack, I'm gonna shorten up my dropper a little bit. Why don't you take a shot at those guys?
Why not?
In there?
I've got about an 18-foot leader.
There you go.
Right here. So
there you go.
We'll see how we do with this light presentation.
Let me sneak back behind you here.
Ooh, there's one right there by that tree. A couple of them.
See him coming up and sipping.
Yep. One of the things that when you're using these longer leaders is that you have to open and make a deeper loop. I'm going to increase the length of my rod, and I just cast an 18-foot leader and made a nice cast because I put more energy in that back cast. Coming over where you were at, I'm not hanging up, so definitely I think you might have been a little long on that. So far, Pete, they're not interested in mine. Okay, I'm going to go off to the side here, measure out my cast. Whoops.
Maybe that'll trickle. Oh, yep. Nicely done.
A little finesse there. But now I can't see my fly.
There it is. I can see it now. Popped right off.
Man, that should have been worth the fish. Again, rather than jerk, I just took a little patience. And just kind of wait for a second. Now what I'll do is I'll bring my line down below me here just while I'm waiting. I'm ready to go. See if I can see a fish working. Now there's one that's right off that edge of those little rocks right there. Just got his nose kind of out of the water right there. I'm going to be a little to the left.
Yeah, I can see him.
Yeah, but you know what? I'm going to let that fly. Oops! Oh! Refused it.
Yeah, he pushed it a little bit with his
Yeah,
nose.
and that was interesting, wasn't it?
Yeah, he gave it a little push.
Oh, but I lost the fly right then. You got to have
you're going right over him.
my nearly 60-year-old eyes are.
Come back and grab that fish.
Oh, I see it now.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah, he pushed that. He pushed that thing, and yeah, you got to set the fly when the fish puts his nose on it. I mean, it's pretty tough to leave it.
well, I was lucky there. Now, you know what I'm going to look at? I want to see how my nymph is operating. Is it sinking well enough? Sometimes and I'm going to bring that just right up close to me. You want to see how you fly? Just hit it down here and just see how it's sinking. Yeah, just barely, about that much off the bottom and about an ankle deep. So I know it's sinking. A lot of times some of these nymphs will float when you think they're sinking. Even the beadhead. I'm going to go way up there again. Again, I pull back on my rod to get the presentation. I better strip in some line here.
Coming at you. Yep.
But I see it's swinging. My line's over here. It's swinging right over that. I would say we have to re-examine what we have for flies, because that's some pretty good presentations.
Yep. And these fish are moving around too in here.
Yep, but they don't seem to be too worried about us.
No, they're just they're moving around in their feeding lane. So that's another thing that you have to pay attention to. If the fish has moved 2-3 feet over to the side, then it doesn't matter how good your presentation is. You need to pick it up and put it in front of him, because they've got a lot of food sources in here, and they can afford to be lazy.
Boy, I just can't believe that one right there bulged up again.
Yep, he moved back into place, didn't he?
Yeah.
Oh, come on over, buddy.
Whoops, we got a tangle here, which can happen. Once you come on in,
All right.
I got to untangle, recheck everything. Yeah, we didn't spook any fish with our cast too, and that's something everybody should know, even though we haven't hooked them, we haven't spooked them. And sometimes it's nice to make a lot of fly changes. I've had, I remember one fish that I caught that I did like 31 fly changes before I caught him. You know what I caught him on? The last change? An elk hair caddis.
Oh, wow.
After trying every technical fly in the book. Finally got so frustrated and just put that on.
The amazing elk hair caddis.
But you know, I didn't spook him. It was a big brown right in a big pool where he dominated it. It was an 8-pound brown. We eventually got him.
That was his game, is the elk hair.
He'd come over and look at it each time and refuse it. Well, there's that one I tried to get. Boy, it's really shallow there, Pete. I think
very
that's the
shallow.
problem. If you think, folks, that we don't tangle up and we don't catch trees, that's wrong. You're always going to do that. It's just you try to minimize it. And sometimes we're not as careful because we're just so concentrated on our fishing.
I think we should keep moving on up.
Yeah, let's keep moving on up. I think I had good cast over these fish.
It gets a little deep up there.
Now
so
what we're going to do, we're going to have to
12
bypass these fish without spooking them.
Exactly.
So what are we going to go wide around here?
We're going to go wide around to the left and still continue to make casts directly over to the side.
Okay.
That's our best bet, probably.
I'm going to follow you.
And move slow always when you're approaching fish.
Finesse fishing here.
Nice little feeding lane right here. Nice little feeding lane. Come on now, mister.
Okay, I'm gonna let you do your thing here.
Move up a little bit.
Hey, boy, you had a nice drift through there.
Yeah, I did. Trying to curve it around and get it to pop back right through there.
We're right over one now.
I see him. Come on now, mister. It looks good to me. Eat that.
Right now, you need to be concentrating on fishing and not casting. Notice that he's just putting the fly right back in. His cast is measured. Watch how he raises his rod to take the line off the water. It's a heavy fly. He's going to pull it up. Again, a long leader makes a big difference. Nice presentation on that cast. Well, right next to the bushes.
And a little bit of sink there. How about there?
Looks pretty good. That looked like a good cast. Down it goes, and it looks like you got a fish. Yes,
Ooh.
very nicely.
He's spunky.
Very nicely done, Peter.
Heading straight for the weeds, and what I'm going to do is a little down and dirty here to try to pull him away from that.
Well, the casting made all the difference. You kept right with it, and you know, this is the reward to practicing your casting and getting better at it, is to get into a nice fish like this.
It's always a good idea, I think, to get rid of the line.
Yep. So I took a little scud this time. You switched from the Baetis to the scud.
I did. There are a lot of scuds in this little small creek.
Yep. And I noticed that there's still Baetis on the water, real small Baetis.
Yep. Now I'm going to try to talk this guy in here. Pretty fish.
Yes, it is.
And he doesn't want to be talked into anything, does he?
Not at all.
One of the things I find really important with landing fish is getting them out of the current.
Yep.
And they don't like the side-to-side thing.
Well, you know, in a small stream like this, you'd think it'd be easy to land fish, but it's not.
No.
Too many things can go wrong.
Aside from the other, you know, the current, they've got all the obstacles of the rocks. Let's slide him on in.
Nice brown trout.
We'll unpeel our dropper from him a little, and then you can see the scud right there on the mouth. Really pretty fish. Let me take the scud out of here.
Yep.
You use scuds a lot?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, they're great on rivers, aren't they?
Yep. All throughout the tailwaters of the West is the scud.
How pretty
water.
that brown is.
When you get down to November and December and January, there's not a whole lot of hatches. Very good.
All right.
All right.
Way to go.
Yeah, good job there, my friend. Pete, it's been great having you in this video, helping us with the casting.
It's been my pleasure, Jack.
But, you know, bring him to this wonderful place in November. You know, I've been here before, but it was always shooting chuckers, not fly fishing for brown trout and rainbows.
It's a beautiful place. Trout don't live in ugly places, do they?
They sure don't. I want to thank you for being with us, and everybody out there. I hope that you learned how to improve your casting. And we want to put you right in Pete's place and in making that perfect cast and being able to hook a beautiful fish and landing it. This is what fly fishing is all about. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks.
To do this. Cabelas offers a wide variety of fly fishing instruction tapes that you can order directly from them.